Hi, it's Lore Friday for June 19th, 2020. I'm your host, DM Galabond. Hey everybody, today on Lore Friday we are going to continue our look at the adventures that make up the campaign Princes of the Apocalypse. And today we are looking at the level 2 adventure for the Tomb of Moving Stones. This adventure is part of the sort of explorations around the starting town of Red Larch. So let's go ahead and get on with that discussion. All right, so the Tomb of Moving Stones is an area that's actually underneath the town of Red Larch itself, and the party can hear about it in one of several ways. There's several people that tell rumors about strange things that happen. And then if they don't really bite on anything, there's actually a time that a sinkhole is supposed to open in the town and dump some townsfolk in. And of course, that makes it pretty obvious, whoa, something is down there. And it's a nice little, fairly short, fairly compact adventure. And a very cool thing about it is they built in a little bit of mystery, which they never resolve. And so that allows you as a DM, even if you're running um, this particular campaign by the book, it allows you to sort of, ad lib or throw in some misdirection or whatever if you want to, or add a little bit of, foreshadowing maybe into sort of the mystery that's unresolved about this particular space. So, uh, what happens is I'll go ahead and take us to the map here. Um, this map opens up, and this area here is where the sinkhole comes in. Now, there's two entries into it. There's an entry from one of the shops from the surface that comes in this way. And then there's this tunnel over here that goes out to one of the quarries on the edge of town over this way. And there's a couple of mysterious. I told you about. There's mystery that's not resolved. There's two dwarven statues, perfectly, perfect dwarven statues. One is not perfect; it's broken in half. But clearly, the implication is that these are petrified dwarves. But there's never anything given in the backstory as to what petrified them in the first place. And then over here in this area, you may be able to see that there's some little indications of, mummified remains. Well, those are the remains of human miners that are laid out here that predate the establishment of Red Larch as a town. And so there's kind of all these legends and this veneration that has grown up over the years by the people who are leaders of Red Larch, who are members of a secret society, if you will, that comes down here. And there's a really odd phenomena that happens in this chamber here. There's a point on the map, and I don't think it's actually marked, so you can place it wherever you want to in the room. Um, there's a point where there's a 10 by 10 invisible cylinder where a strange phenomena happens that stones up to 500 pounds will simply be suspended in air. and they will sometimes slowly turn or whatever. And so this society, the secret society of the leaders, they call themselves the Believers, and they call the ancient minor corpses of the Delvers. The Believers will come down here and they will kind of look at these floating stones for some kind of portent. Um, and they have arranged for, uh, not surprisingly, as with a lot of secret societies dealing with people in political office, uh, they have made sure that the people who are believers are put in best position to prosper in the town of Red Larch. And if anybody kind of wants to upset that apple cart, well, they kind of have this, they use their meetings of the secret society to make sure that, oh, well, they run into some hard times or they get driven off or suspicion falls on them for some things. And the implication from the backstory is that sometimes they've even had people murdered if they get in the way of what the believers want to do. Then there's this whole corridor here where there's a series of suspended cages that will fall and trap people in this corridor. And now in the adventure, there's been an infiltration by members of the Black Earth cult, which is one of the four cults of elemental evil. And there's a priest of the Black Earth cult that is kind of trying to set up Red Larch as a base of sorts for his cult, and he's been manipulating some of the energies in this chamber here with the floating stones and trying to interpret for the believers uh, signs, if you will, from the stones that would have them be more favorable towards his particular cult, of course. And then, if the meddling player characters come down here and they start exploring, well, there's going to be believers that don't want them poking around where they don't belong because they're outsiders. And then, of course, the Black Earth cult is not going to want them poking around where they don't belong because that could mess up their influence over the town elders. So, this is and like I say, this is the map. So, you have a fairly compact area, and then there's even this sort of spur that on the official map is just kind of goes into a dead end here. But, if you were going to take this and drop it into a homebrew campaign, well, you could certainly have that go off to something else. You could say that there was some sort of it met up with some other complex to the south. Um, And in fact, speaking of homebrew, in fact, I did use this in my Walker of Waterdeep campaign. Red Larch I had be the stand-in for the town of Lambholt. And I put in the little side treks around Red Larch as potential side treks for um, my characters when they got to Lambholt, which of course I should specify that's in Innistrad, which is a plane out of Magic the Gathering. So completely divorcing it from the Sword Coast and putting it somewhere else entirely. But what I did is I had a demon cult that was using this as some kind of a ritual room, and I had these. They weren't um, long dead remains. They were fresh blood sacrifices that were being conducted by the demon and its cultists. So of course the party had heard some strange noises from their inn at night, and they had gone outside to investigate. And whoop, sinkhole opens up. So then they go in and a couple of them have really ungodly passive perceptions. So they noticed there was something weird about this hallway. So they said, well, we're not going to go down there. We're just going to wander around here. And what you find when you wander around here is there's a couple of giant rats and stuff like that. So it's nothing. Party their level, they just kind of, ignore those. And if they try to, I don't think the rats tried to attack them. So as long as they didn't try to attack them, they just weren't even going to bother with those things. And then they come in here and they found these statues, and they're kind of weird. Okay, well, what's this? What's going on here? And then they hear the chanting and everything from down this way, and they go in, and they had a big, huge fight. And this demon was a tough demon, and he had a bunch of minions with him as well. So um, it was a fight where I knocked a couple of the PCs to 0 hit points before they finally started whittling down the numbers of the enemies enough that they could turn the tide of the battle. Fortunately, there's a cleric and there's a lot of um, liquid healing in the party, so they were able to get people back up and into the fight before they were having to start making death saves and everything. But it was touch and go there for a while. Demon was unleashing things like cloud kill and all kinds of stuff on him. So, as written though, this adventure is for level 2 characters. It does come up with a magic item. I think it's like a +1 dagger that sheds some light. Uh, and they have the opportunity to perhaps face a low level cleric of one of the elemental evil cults while they're in the middle of investigating this. Um, they also, of course, have opportunities to make friends and or enemies with people in the town of Red Larch. And the fact that you're fighting, by the way it's written, the fact that you're fighting a bunch of humanoids and some giant rats makes it really easy to reuse this in any kind of homebrew setting. You can take this mystery. I think because Innistrad really doesn't have any dwarves, I think I changed those statues from statues of dwarves to statues of humans. Um, you can easily do that because it never explains what turned those things into statues. You could have that be part of what they find. Like maybe there's a basilisk den, or maybe this is the den of a Medusa or something like that, or maybe there's something down here, some ancient evil that's blocked up that somebody will the party can eventually uncover and find. So it's really well set up to be a nice, uh, self-contained, but potentially very dangerous and even kind of plot pivotal sort of encounter that you could have here in this little space. So I like it a lot, and the fact that it gives you a couple of just loose threads, the way it's written, for you to dangle your own story hooks off of, is very nice. Uh, as we mentioned at the top, this comes out of the Princess of the Apocalypse adventure, which was published in 2015, in April of that year. It's written for D&D 5e, set in the Sword Coast, but like we said, you can easily move this individual piece, or as I did in my Walker of Waterdeep, you can move the entire town of Red Larch and all of its surrounding, little antecedent uh, and adjacent, I should say, not antecedent, but adjacent um, adventure hooks. You can take all of those and put them in a homebrew world or in a different campaign, or move it like to the world of Greyhawk or something else, whatever. wherever you're going to play. And because it's all humanoids and giant rats, it's easy to move it to a different edition of the game. If you're playing an older edition and you want some kind of simple cavern type map, or you want a little side story for your players to go through, you can just easily swap out the 5e humanoids with appropriate humanoids for the level of your characters in whatever edition you're playing. All right, well, that is going to do it for this week. This week's Lore Friday. Next week we will be back and we will continue looking at some of the low-level adventures from Princes of the Apocalypse. We're going to go through that whole campaign, adventure by adventure, and talk about some of the ways you can either reuse that or change that around, or what you could do with those types of things. All right. Once again, I have been DM Galabond. If you like what we're doing here on this channel, there's a subscribe button down below. Would love it if you could go ahead and click that subscribe button, and then after clicking the subscribe button, you can click the little notification bell that will let you know every time we drop a new video on the channel. Also, in the notes, you'll find all the ways that you can follow me online, find out about the games that I run on my Twitch channel on Thursday nights and on Sunday afternoons. Also, this coming week, if you are watching it before the weekend of June 20th, 2020, I'm going to be running a one-shot game on Saturday. It's a one-shot game I wrote for an online convention, and I will be playing through it on my Twitch channel with a group of players on Saturday afternoon. I'll be doing a couple of extra notifications about that on my Instagram and uh, on my other social media outlets, as well as putting something up on YouTube about it for people to find out how they can either watch it or participate in it. Okay, well, that's going to do it for me. I hope that everybody has a great week. Hope we will see you back here tomorrow for Combat Saturday. Otherwise, have a fantastic week, and we will see you again next week for another Lore Friday. Good night, everybody.